Hello everybody and welcome to another video, and today it is the 12th of September and there's a lot to talk about, but I'm going to try to keep this brief. So let's get into this. In the Kherson region, I really don't have much to say besides the fact that Ukraine, they released another one of their statements about villages that they claim to have taken. So they say that they've taken Visokopilia, which we sort of already knew about. The one thing that sort of stood out is that they took Belohirka according to their statement. So there's sort of a conflict over here with like differing reports about what's going on in Belohirka. So again, it might be under their control. I might have to change it. Just depends on if we see some footage from there. Now, the Russians, they actually on the 9th of September, or was it the 10th, one of those 2 days, they actually struck a pretty large ammunition depot in Voznesensk, and we have confirmation of this based on the fact that there were some videos released, although they were blurred out. So what's being said by the Russian Ministry of Defense is that they destroyed 45,000 tons of ammo in this strike, and then there were also some strikes reported on Mykolaiv 2 days ago, although the damage here is ambiguous. So that's really it for Kherson. Again, frontline is really just stabilized in this area as Ukraine focuses in other areas. I did make some changes to the Kharkiv map just based on the fact that if even Rybar shows that these areas are under Ukrainian control, then I'm obligated to just change it as well. I was under the belief that Mali, Shcherbaki, and Shcherbaki were under their control, the Russian control, because there were like reports of Ukraine attacking in that direction, but it seems as if at some point they were able to retake it. So there was some positional fighting around here recently. What's more important is the fact that there were reports of an attack towards Vasiliska, and even Rybar, they were saying that there was some heavy fighting in this area, specifically just south of Kamyanske, not necessarily in Vasilivka, but in the direction of Vasilivka. And Vasilivka is important. It's an important town to capture if the Ukrainians want to reach Zaporizhzhia, because they did already try to do an amphibious landing and it didn't work out well for them. So if they actually want to reach the power plant, if that's really their goal in all of this, then taking Vasilivka is very important. And it is being said that they transferred a lot of artillery and MLRS munitions in this direction, so we will see if the fighting here is heightened as time goes on. But for now, it's just rumors from Russian military civilian authorities that Ukraine will launch some sort of offensive over here. If they do, then it's going to be pretty difficult, I would say. I don't think that it's the same dynamics as there was in Kharkiv, although if they can find a weak spot, which is something that they are looking to do right now, because they already do have the initiative, so they're going to look for some other weak spot in the Russian lines, and then they're going to tap into that. So we're going to have to analyze the front line to see where this weakness could potentially be located. So again, we had the talk of the Ugledar offensive, and there's no real updates about any like changes to the front line in Ugledar just yet. But an interesting thing to note is that in Maryinka, the Ukrainian reports are saying that they've actually retaken the town, and the Deep State map, which is the map, it's a website that's pro-Ukraine, and they track the front lines. They have the map looking like this, which shows that Ukraine took back Maryinka, and I'm skeptical that they could take back all of Maryinka in one day because of how dense the fighting is over here. That's not something you'd expect, so it's possible that in the future they might retake Maryinka, but I'm not changing anything for the time being. There were rumors from actually pro-Russian Telegram channels that 2 battalions were being sent back to Maryinka, and I know that there were some brigades that actually fled from Maryinka previously, so maybe some of them are just got reorganized and get sent back. If I'm not mistaken, the 56th Brigade was one of them. That's one that I used to talk about a lot, and they might have been resent redeployed to the front lines. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to retake Maryinka, but maybe they'll just continue putting up a stiff defense. And one of the things that was posited is that potentially there could be a pincer move on Donetsk, and this is very unlikely because of how fortified the DPR has made all of the Donetsk region. But it might be a long-term Ukrainian goal if they're able to continue to expel Russian forces from their land to sort of do like this pincer move where they go in from one side attacking Donetsk and then from like the Avdiivka area. And this would probably be the most costly thing that they can possibly do at the moment. So I just don't think that they're ever even going to try to break through. But I might be wrong about this because you can see over here we have a new video and geolocation of a failed Ukrainian assault on Pesky. And Pesky, this was under Russian control, we know, and now you had some like Ukrainian tanks being sent in this direction, especially the T-72s. Ukraine loves those now after they were used in the Kharkiv area. Some are even being used now in Pesky, and you had an assault trying to break through into the northern residential blocks, and the video shows how they sort of like attempted to assault but were just easily pushed back by probably Russian artillery. The 11th DPR regiment is one of the units in this area, but you also have the Sparta battalion that is key in holding the DPR's lines, and I'm going to get into them in a second. But in general, the Ukrainian forces that were sent to here, they were forced to retreat back into their hedgerows, and now if this is the last wave, who knows how many more waves are going to continue being sent, because there have been several waves over the past week or so of Ukrainian assaults, and that's probably delayed the Russian advance in this area. But let's say it fizzles out now, the Russians in DPR, they can probably advance towards this road, and it's something I've been talking about for a while, but understand that it's very heavily fortified with trenches at all this area, so that's part of the reason why it hasn't been taken yet. And the War Gonzo reporters, they released images of destroyed Ukrainian T-72Bs and the upgraded T-72 AMT. So clearly the dynamics in this area are different. So anyway, there's not much news from the rest of the front. You do have some news from the Bakhmut area where the Wagner PMCs are starting to advance again in Bakhmut. And I say this without getting into like a specific location where they're advancing because I just don't know where they are right now. I would say that most likely this is their domain of control, and then like all of this is probably under Ukrainian control. But basically their strategy is not to attack head on into Bakhmut because this would be way too costly at the moment. So they're just trying to like take these key defense nodes across the front line and then use that to coalesce their forces and then tap into one sort of like bridgehead, not with a river or anything, but just like one area where they can push through the front lines and actually make a breakthrough. But again, this is going to take a while, and in the meantime, they're just heavily shelling Bakhmut. There were some very large strikes in Bakhmut, some huge explosions over the past few days, some that haven't been seen in like a month or so. So maybe the Wagner group is actually going to tap into this, the new reinforcements that are being sent to Ukraine, and actually push into Bakhmut later on. But it's going to be difficult. I can say that for sure. No real news or updates about the Seversk area. It seems as if Russia has been able to prevent any sort of breakthroughs by Ukraine in this area for the time being, so I'm not going to change anything about that. Here's an interesting geolocation that was made. I would recommend looking through the video. You have actually Russian reinforcements arriving in Mariupol, and they have no markings of Z's or V's, so they're not from the O group or the VZ groups. So this is an entirely new unit, and they're just being sent through Mariupol before they actually get sent to the front lines. And this isn't the first time that we've heard about new reinforcements. We did see how the Third Corps arrived, and Now we're going to have to wait and see where they actually begin engaging. We know that some of them are at least are in the Kharkiv area, but some might be in other areas. Maybe they're trying to patch up the Vuhledar front in preparation for some sort of offensive. And maybe some are being sent to DPR now because Russia did talk about how they were trying to focus more on Donetsk, and that was sort of their excuse for withdrawing from Kharkiv. So maybe you could see some push there if they're able to stabilize the front around Kharkiv first. And that's something that I'm going to get into right after I'm done with all of this. So, anyway, another thing to mention about reinforcements is that the Chechens, they're sending in like three more. I'm not sure if it's brigades or battalions, but they're sending in three more units. I think it's three more battalion tactical groupings, and they were trained in Chechnya, and they're just going to be sent now to the front lines. They could probably help out with the offensive operations in Soledar because you have a lot of Chechens in that area. Anyway, we have to talk about the situation in Lyman, where I don't really have much of like a change, but just be aware of the fact that Ukraine has a bridgehead over here, and that Lyman is seriously threatened, and that there has to be some sort of defensive line built by the DPR forces in this area, the LPR forces, and the Russian forces to prevent any sort of breakthrough. Also, Zerne, I think I need to change that to under Ukraine control by now. But again, the Lyman city, it hasn't fallen yet. Also, Bohorodniki is now actually under Ukrainian control for the first time in a while. It was a very heavily contested town, I will say that, but now there's really no use for Bohorodniki. Entire region, the entire reason that Russia was even fighting in this area was to get a foothold to later on advance on Slavyansk, but all those hopes have really evaporated by now, so there's really no reason to even try to hold on to these untenable positions where they've barely been able to make any gains over the past few months. And the same thing sort of applies to Svyatogorsk, where we have Ukraine entering the town, and I need to really change the map. I promise that I'll do it by the weekend because that's when I'll have some more time to like go over and make it look nice, because now it looks really ugly. But anyway, Svyatogorsk, it's either fully under Ukrainian control or it's contested. And we know that Ukraine crossed the river. Maybe they did it in a pontoon bridge. I think that's what they actually did. It makes more sense than them actually crossing the forested area and the rivers all the way to Svyatogorsk. So I think that they just did it via pontoon bridge. And then they actually took a photo of themselves right next to, like right adjacent to the Svyatogorsk Lavra Monastery. In addition, there was videos and photos released from the administrative building in Svyatogorsk, which showed that it was under Ukrainian control, and that's right over here. So it's possible that in these northern areas you still have a Russian presence, but this is very nebulous, and the LPR authorities, they actually say that it's still contested, so there's no way to know for sure just yet, but I think that Russia will end up withdrawing from this area because there's no like real strategic gain at the moment by holding on to it. Um, the only thing I could think of is that they'd want to like maintain a line around the river over here, but now I think that's getting like it's too late to do that because Ukraine already has like a bridgehead in this area, so they'd probably have to like move on to a line focused around like Prishivierova, Alexandrivka, like this. And then there could be some like gray zones in this forested area. Now, let's move on to the Kharkiv area where we really don't have much of a change from last time. The only changes are just stuff that I did to the map where I just made it all blue. And I need to like make it look nicer because, you know, it's not exactly accurate. I just did this quickly to make it look presentable for the video, but I need to make a polygon here for the like 5% of Kharkiv that's still under Russian control. Um, that's really it for Kharkiv, if I'm being honest. But one thing that I will mention about the Kharkiv region is that these two towns over here, just bordering Kharkiv in the Belgorod area, Nekhotivka and Zuravelivka, they're actually being evacuated by the authorities in the area. They're basically just requesting whatever civilians remain in these two towns to leave. They've done this previously because there's just like a lot of cross-border shelling in this area, and now that's going to get magnified just because Ukraine is so close to the area now. So that's something to keep in mind. In addition to all of this, there were also power outages in Belgrade on the 7th of September due to some explosion in an electrical station, like it was damaged or something. And then yesterday, right after the Russian strikes on basically many Ukrainian energy and production facilities, you saw like a very similar thing happen in Belgrade where they had like a lot of blackouts, and it just made me think that perhaps somehow the energy production in Belgrade was connected somehow to Ukraine, and then as a result of the Russian strikes, there was some sort of like reciprocal damage done to the Belgrade area, and it might have come from the fact that this Kharkiv TEC-5 station was very badly damaged, and this is the exact location of a video that was recorded. It was in this area, but anyway, there were several other strikes recorded that I'm gonna click on. So you had one over here on the Kremenchuk hydroelectric power plant. You also had a strike on the Kramatorsk repair facility for rocket launchers. That's another one that was reported by the Russian Ministry of Defense. And I'm pretty sure there was one more strike. It was over here on just south of Zemiev. I need to find the location quickly. So it's right over here, and it's called the Zemievska thermal power plant. So this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of power plants. There are many others that could be struck in the future, and it did cause a temporary blackout in areas such as Kharkiv, Sumy, Poltava, Dnipro, even in Zaporizhzhia, Odessa, and Kramatorsk, the Donetsk area, 60% of Kiev as well. So it was a very widespread event, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, as I said. There can be many more strikes on the quote-unquote critical infrastructure of Ukraine. There are already reports about water supply shortages in Sumy and in Kharkiv, so this is clearly going to be magnified if Russia just continues with these strikes, which they can. Here's a map of some of the power plants in Ukraine. You have a lot in the east that are still operating that could be attacked in the future. Look through all of these, and I think this is sort of a threat by Russia, just to show, first of all, that they're still in the game. You can't underestimate them, but also I think it's a message in general to Ukraine not to toe the line, because that's something that if they get too much hubris and then go out and do something stupid, then this is sort of just a reminder by Russia that they're still powerful. They still have a potential to wreak havoc on Ukraine if they so choose, because at any moment they could set up ships over here and launch Kinzhal missiles at whatever power plants they want to destroy. And I will admit that the electricity was reestablished and that the connectivity is back up in these areas now. But this is a temporary thing if Russia continues with these strikes. So we're going to have to wait and see. But also, while it was down, the reserve capacities were utilized, and we have to see like how much reserves Ukraine even has left in some of these power plants, and how much their generators can really handle during like such a difficult situation. So those are all things to look out for in the future. But besides that, that's it for today. And thank you all for watching. I'll see you later.